There is a story from the middle-length discourses that the Buddha once told. It acts like a sharp blade, cutting through the intricate webs of human reasoning regarding misfortune and blessing. A traveler was struck by a poisoned arrow. The wound was bleeding, and the toxin was spreading through every fiber of muscle and every vein, surging with searing pain like fire. His relatives brought a doctor, wanting to immediately pull out the arrow and treat him. But the injured man stopped them, his voice hoarse with pain and fear. He said, "Wait, first, tell me who shot me. What is his lineage? What kind of wood is the bow made of? From what bird do the feathers on the shaft come?" He insisted on asking, even as blood soaked his clothes and the pain felt as if it were tearing his chest apart. He kept questioning and questioning, as if having the answers would somehow heal the wound. But the poison did not wait. It seeped deep into his heart, and the traveler died before the arrow could even be pulled out. The Buddha taught that human beings are exactly like that. When suffering is present, we rush into questioning why, or why me, or who caused this, while forgetting that the greatest danger is not the arrow from the outside, but the state of a mind poisoned by clinging to vain questions. Imagine the moment the poison begins to seep into the blood. The pain is not just physical, it is an utter spiritual panic. The traveler could not endure the helplessness of facing an anonymous arrow. He wanted to control, to understand, and to name the enemy in order to turn an invisible pain into something graspable. But that very resistance, delay, caused the poison to spread faster. If he had stopped, and if he had trusted the doctor's hands to pull out the arrow first, and then questioned later, his life would have been saved. The Buddha did not tell us to stop thinking. He only told us to think at the right time. When an arrow is stuck in you, the first priority is to pull it out. Afterward, if you want to ask, there is no harm in asking. But humans often let curiosity, dissatisfaction, and the urge to find a cause overwhelm their survival instinct. That is the greatest calamity, not because we encounter disaster, but because we do not know how to face disaster with mindful action. However, if understood deeply, within the very misfortune of being struck by an arrow lies an immense blessing. Why? Because the shock of pain and failure strikes so hard that it shatters all layers of self-complacency. A person might live their whole life in tranquility, but if that tranquility lacks wisdom, it is no different from a stagnant pond. It is calm, but it is rotting. Only the storm of adversity stirs the depths, bringing to the surface everything that has settled for too long. When we know how to stop and pull out that arrow with mindful action, instead of procrastinating with intellectualizations, then the very arrow of yesterday becomes the door that opens to the truth. Yesterday's failure, betrayal, and loss are all the greatest teachers, provided we dare to look directly at the wound and heal it in this very moment. Think of a renowned architect in Europe who spent 20 years building a great monument. He believed it would last forever, the pride of his life. But a sudden earthquake leveled everything in a matter of minutes. Standing before the ruins, he sat down, not to weep and not to call a lawyer to sue someone. He sat in silence, looking at the fragments, and in that stillness, he suddenly understood that everything he called an achievement was actually just a brief dream. He had not built it to be enduring. He had built it to satisfy his ego. That great loss opened up another depth of life for him. He began to draw sketches that would never be built, just to enjoy the pure joy of creation without needing a result. That is the blessing within the misfortune. If not for the earthquake, he would never have known that true joy does not lie in the finished structure, but in every soaring stroke of the pen on paper. But please, if that patient is lucky enough to escape the arrow, his mind immediately cries out, "I am saved. I am so lucky." That blessing of being saved, if not anchored in mindfulness, will turn into a silent misfortune. It becomes a joy mixed with complacency and a satisfaction mixed with laziness. Gradually, that person will forget that other arrows can still come at any time. That is the second message, though it need not be written in dry words. Look at a famous pianist who had a glorious performance, with the entire hall applauding without end. That joy of victory is like an intoxication. In that intoxication, he believes he is number one and that his technique is perfect. He begins to skip practice and to ignore feedback. Complacency, like a film of oil, coats his mind. Then one day, he steps onto the stage. His fingers still glide over the keys, but his heart is absent. The audience applauds out of politeness, but he knows he has lost the most sacred thing. The blessing of that glorious night became a misfortune, as it stole his humility and his hunger to learn. To regain it, he must go through bitter failures, so that the blessing can become a lesson more valuable than any success. So, how does one live between the two shores of misfortune and blessing without falling onto either? The answer does not lie in theory, but in a strike from Zen Master Wu Yan of ancient times. A monk came to ask, "Master, within misfortune there is blessing, and within blessing there is misfortune. What is the ultimate truth?" Master Wu Yan looked directly into the questioner's eyes, then suddenly swung his staff and struck the monk hard on the shoulder, shouting, "Stop dreaming. You have already passed the two ends. Live right in the middle." The monk was startled and stunned, and in that moment, all concepts of misfortune and blessing vanished. What remained? A pure strike, a direct seeing without concepts. That strike was not a punishment, but a means for the questioner to return to non-dual vision. Imagine, when a sudden shock arrives, all thoughts stop and all duality settles. Only a pure, nameless moment remains. In that moment, misfortune is no longer misfortune, and blessing is no longer blessing. That is the key to remaining calm amidst all ups and downs. It is not about trying to turn misfortune into blessing through positive thinking, but about transcending both to stand at the center of life where all phenomena come and go like drifting clouds. That strike still echoes in the souls of seekers for thousands of years. It does not call on us to stop reasoning, but calls on us to touch reality with our whole body and mind. When the mind is still fixated on the words misfortune and blessing, humans have strayed from reality. Misfortune is only misfortune when the mind judges it as bad, and blessing is only blessing when the mind labels it as good. But the event itself and the present moment itself does not carry those two names. A flower that blooms does not know if it is a blessing or a misfortune. It simply blooms. Look at a lotus rising from the mud. That mud, to worldly people, is something filthy and a misfortune. But without the mud, how could the lotus be so pure? The mud does not claim itself to be a misfortune, and the lotus does not boast of being a blessing. Both simply exist in a wordless dance. A falling rain does not know if it brings profit or loss. It is simply rain. The raindrops fall on leaves, on roofs, and on the road all the same. Only the human mind differentiates. The farmer rejoices while the traveler complains. The rain is not at fault. The fault lies in the mind that labels. Human suffering stems from trying to arrange everything into two pigeonholes. And then, when things do not fit into the pigeonhole we desire, the heart becomes turbulent. Zen Master Wu Yan used a strike to break those pigeonholes. Once that vision is reached, people no longer struggle with the questions of why did I meet misfortune, or how do I keep the blessing. They have only one task, which is to live fully in the present. If difficulty comes, they receive it with a calm mind, act with wisdom, and let go when the matter has passed. If luck comes, they also receive it with a calm mind, without complacency or clinging. They know that all things are impermanent, and true happiness does not come from getting what we want or avoiding what we hate, but from an inner freedom that is not bound by any circumstance. Returning to daily life, a person losing their job may see it as the ultimate misfortune. But if they are mindful enough, within that misfortune, they have the blessing of experiencing humility, patience, and the opportunity to find themselves again. Conversely, someone getting a promotion may see it as a great blessing. But if they become complacent and arrogant, they will gradually lose their friends, their family happiness, and their health. That is a misfortune. Nothing lies in the external circumstances. It all lies in the attitude of the mind. Imagine an old writer living in seclusion in the French countryside. He was once a famous author, but his later books were no longer well received. The feeling of failure was like a knife cutting into his ego. He stopped writing and lived in isolation. One day, he happened to see a child playing by a stream. The child picked up a leaf, dropped it into the water, and cheered at every swirl. When the leaf disappeared, the child was not sad. He just found another leaf. And the writer suddenly realized that what he needed was not fame, but the joy of creation, like the child playing with the leaf. He began to write again, not for publication, but just to enjoy every word. The misfortune of failure became a blessing, as it taught him the lesson of non-attachment. And if one day he becomes famous again, will he lose that small realization? If he becomes complacent, that blessing will turn back into misfortune. The ancients once said, "If you understand, things are just as they are. If you do not understand, things are just as they are." Misfortune and blessing are the same. Do not let those two arrows pierce your heart. Pull out the poisoned arrow of clinging and stubbornness. Live with a non-discriminatory vision, caught between the two ends, or between prosperity and decay. When you do, a rose blooming or a leaf falling is an invaluable lesson, and every moment is an infinite blessing, transcending every concept of misfortune and fortune that the world has ever named.